Welcome and good afternoon, everybody. This is Tal with Physician Loans. I'm president of Physician Loans. I'm going to be presenting the session today. Thank you for joining. We're going to have an information-packed session here. Before we get started, I'd like to know who is in the audience. When you registered, we don't ask you for your information. So show of hands, how many of you are on as graduating medical school students or somehow attached or connected to a graduating med or dental, but a graduating student? All right, very good. I see most of the hands going up. How about post-graduation residents? Show of hands for residents. Okay, not as many. Looks like, and I know we've got some visitors as well, so looks like it's mostly an audience of graduating students today. Very good. All right, so one piece of housekeeping before we get started. Quick disclosure that you may have found out about this through your institution. There is no financial tie between Physician Loans and your school or your hospital. They would have sent you this information to help get you educated on home buying, on financial literacy. And of course, after the session, you may choose to reach out to us. You may want to work with us, have us help you out, but under no obligation to do so. With that, just a brief intro as to who we are, why we are here. So I like to start with this photo on the right-hand side. That's me sitting down, and that's me many years ago. If you're able to see the video of myself on the screen, I'm a little bit more mature looking these days, but the person behind me, directly behind me, is one of my younger brothers, and this is his match day ceremony, and to our left are our parents. And the reason I like to start with this picture is because it does tell the story of Physician Loans. So our parents started this company as a generic mortgage company back in the early 90s, and I joined full-time shortly after that. And one thing that we noticed, especially once we had for me as a brother and for them a son in medical school and residency, is that it's a bright group of folks, but when it came to knowledge about buying a home, about real estate, about financial literacy in general, they needed a lot of hand-holding, and they needed also some special financing as well. So we were pioneers in the space of creating a special mortgage for doctors. And today we're a preferred provider through associations such as the AMA, AOA, SOMA. We do these presentations on campus during non-COVID time at about 40 campuses across the country. I've been at this for over 20 years. So I'm here to educate you, to provide information. I try to be as absolutely unbiased as possible. And another reason, or another way of looking at why we're here, is there's a recent talk that I gave where we sent out questions in advance to the audience, and the responses, these are direct quotes, guys. What the heck is a mortgage? I have no clue what I'm doing. Don't even know where to begin. And my favorite was simply a one-word answer: everything. So, we know as a graduating med student, as a resident, and again, if I say graduating med student, I'm referring to those of you, a dental student, vet student, medical degree. You're all counted in that group. So I want to help answering these questions, and one of the one of the challenges you have is that this is you, right? Like you're looking in the mirror here. This is the medicine you. You're the smart one. You have been trained to learn a lot, to become an expert. However, when it comes to mortgages, this is what you feel like, right? You are a deer caught in the headlights. You haven't been taught any of this. You don't know where to turn. So that can be a very unsettling feeling. So if we look at your questions, those were some of the fun examples that I picked out, but looking at, let's say, better worded questions, you want to know things such as, should I buy or rent? How much do I qualify for? What kind of money do I need? A little bit about the types of loans. So before we get right into the slides here, one other housekeeping item. Live Q&A throughout. You are welcome to ask questions on your dash there. You're able to type in questions. I will be tracking that. I might pause every once in a while just to take a look at those, and then I will incorporate my answers into what I'm talking about. It can be a question about anything. It doesn't have to be about the slide that's up there. And for those of you that are able to stick around once we're done, I will stay on as long as necessary in order to continue answering your questions. All right, so with that, let's get into this. Number one question: buy versus rent. We know you need a roof over your head, and this is the graphic that I've come up with that I think. This is the Venn diagram where three things all have to overlap if you're going to consider buying. You have to buy or that you should buy, and that's another thing you'll notice. I don't go into this talk saying everybody should be buying a home or that you have to buy the home or that it's going to be the best thing for you. I give you the information on how to make that decision. Some of you will buy, some of you will not. But if you want to consider buying, here's what needs to happen. You're going to find out how much you qualify for. That's one circle. And you're going to find that out by talking with a loan officer. You're going to determine how much of a budget you feel comfortable with for your housing. You know how to do that on your own because you have to do the same thing if you are renting. You're also going to find out what the local home prices are, what you can get for how much money. You're going to be able to, you could get online, learn a little bit about that on your own, but to really do that properly, you're going to work with a real estate agent to give you that information. So if you are buying in a city where how much you qualify for lines up with how much you're comfortable paying, and that overlaps with what the local home prices are, great. Now at least you know you are a candidate for buying. Now it means you're not wasting your time going through the process of seeing what's available, and if you're going to buy, but you go through that process. Clarence just sent in a question or a comment saying unable to hear anything. Once again, we did that audio check at the start. That might be on Clarence's end. Can a few of you, just a show of hands, raise your hands if you're able to hear me okay? Make sure audio is working fine. Yeah, okay, I see the hands coming up. Thank you. I'm blowing everyone's hands. Clarence, I apologize. That might be on your end there. All right. So, what's the challenge? Well, what if you are matching as a resident in a location where the home prices aren't in line with a resident's salary? So now you don't have this overlap on your Venn diagram, and it means you're going to have no choice but to rent. You might qualify to buy. You might want to buy, but it's not going to be feasible for you. So that's, again, I'm just doing a high level right now. I'll be showing you how to go through this in a little more detail, in a more systematic way. Right, so the key is you will be able to buy if these three points all overlap. And so another way to look at it is here are the 4 things that are going to matter most to get through the learning curve on this and to get up the learning curve and to see if this works. It's the Venn diagram we just went over. That's number 1. You'll want to work with the right loan officer. Again, this is high level. I'm going to drill down and talk to you more about that. You'll want to work with the right real estate agent who's going to help you out. And you are going to want to have the right financing. So to have a smooth process, a smooth educational process, which at the end, you'll be able to make an informed decision that you want to buy or that you don't, or that you can't buy or will not buy. And if you do want to proceed, that the transaction goes through properly. These are the 4 keys for things that you'll want to have in place. So before we get into those details, what's your number 2 question? I like to hit these first 2 questions right from the start. It kind of alleviates a lot of anxiety or concern or just not knowing where to even start. So the number 2 question is, what are the prices of homes you can look at? So a typical resident salary, if you're a graduating med student, you're starting a residency, you're going to buy something in the $125,000 to $330,000 range. You know, obviously what you get for that will vary depending on whether you match here in Atlanta, where I'm located. You can match in Columbus, Ohio, where our company is located, or if you match in San Diego, you know, different property values across all 3 markets. But you'll qualify and purchase for something in that range, and typically it'll be monthly mortgage payments of around $800, $900, about $1,800 or $1,900 a month. And we know this because we know what a resident makes. It's pretty much the same across the board with some variance for geography. If you're a dual income family, now dual income does not mean you have to be married. If you are buying this house with somebody who will be living in it with you, so I'm not referring to a parent here, but somebody, whether it's a spouse, partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, it could also just be a friend that you're buying the house with, but both of you will have to be on the mortgage, both of you will be using this as your house. Then you're looking at $450,000, $500,000 plus. What I love in seeing the audience's reaction is, again, during COVID, I'm not traveling and giving this talk at schools. We do them virtually, but you know, if I'm in front of a group of students in Toledo and I say, yeah, you can buy a house for $500,000 as a resident, who needs a $500,000 mansion? Well, maybe that's the case in Toledo, but if you've matched it at, let's say, Tufts, just for a condo in the area, you're looking in the mid $600,000 and up. All right, so again, we'll get into more detail on that, but at least this gives you a general idea of what to expect. So when we consider the buy versus rent, there are 4 decision factors, and number 1 is the match city, which we've already talked about. You know, the housing prices are different depending on where you go. Here's an interesting article that I came across not too long ago in Bloomberg Business Week, and it talked about the cost of living in different parts of the country, and they talked about, they mentioned Houston being one of the most affordable. And if you look at this chart, hopefully it's large enough on your screen. I realize it's a little bit light, and I apologize, but on the x-axis, you've got your cost of living index, and then on the y-index, you've got your y-axis, you've got your pay index, and you can see where different cities fall in. And notice Houston is in the top left-hand quadrant over there, meaning you get paid the most in relation to also the cost of living in that area, as opposed to look pretty much directly across from that to the right. On the far right, you've got San Diego, where it costs the most to live, or among the highest cities from an expense standpoint. And while you make more in San Diego compared to a Columbus, Ohio, or Milwaukee, Baltimore, you're still paying proportionally more, so it's a very expensive place. So this kind of a chart also helps you start thinking about where is it going to be possible to buy as a resident versus rent. So there's the Match City. We'll be coming to that a little bit more. Then there's the time in the home. The general rule of thumb with real estate is the longer you're going to live in the home, the more it makes sense to buy versus rent. If you're going to stay put for the next 4, 5, 6 years, it makes more sense to buy than if you're only going into a 3-year residency. Certainly, if you're going to stay put somewhere for 10 years, you wouldn't even consider renting. You would buy the moment you could. So one tool that helps with this is the FHFA.gov website. By the way, there on the last page, the last slide here, there will be a resources screen, and you guys are welcome to screen capture anything you want here. Certainly take notes. Certainly, if you want the handouts, we can send that out as well. Not a problem. You're welcome to reach out or email. But the FHFA.gov puts out a quarterly report on housing price values, and that's something I like to use as a early resource in determining if it's a good idea to buy in a particular marketplace or not. And if you look at one graph from the latest report, it shows housing values in the U.S. since 1991 through, this is a quarterly report, and the last one was put out September of 2020. And even if the screen you're looking at is too small to see the dates along the bottom, it's pretty clear by this chart where 2008, where that crash happened, the recession. But notice what happened to real estate over the years. It recovered. If we were to expand this graph into smaller increments, you see a lot more kind of like up and down over a period of time in real estate. And the point of this is that, yes, over the long term, real estate is a good idea. Short term, there certainly is risk. Over the last year, real estate, the average across the country has been 6.5%. So, keep this in mind as you're buying, and again, the general rule, 1 or 2 years, if you're going to a 1-year internship or research, just rent. 3 years, it depends on what it is you are buying and where. 4 years or more is where it makes sense to, even more seriously consider buying. It makes sense to buy for a 3-year residency in many markets, not in all, and that's part of a discussion you have with your real estate agent. And then you've got your lifestyle. So the lifestyle has nothing to do with numbers, with the math, with buying a home as an investment. It's just just like with anything you own. If you have a home, there's maintenance involved. So if you don't want to deal with any of that, doesn't matter what the numbers are, doesn't matter if it's affordable or not, just rent until you're ready to buy. If you want to be able to call the landlord or the super anytime something comes up, go ahead and rent, buy when you're ready. What if you want to buy, but you don't mind some work, but maybe not as much? We'll split the difference. Buy a condo or a townhome where you're not responsible for everything, where there's a homeowners association that takes care of all of the outside work for you. Then the final point is the financial benefits. So I'll start this slide by saying there are financial benefits to buying a home. I'm going to go through those principles right now, especially because I think it's important to understand these principles from a financial literacy standpoint if you're considering being a homeowner. However, this doesn't mean that I'm saying you have to buy a home, especially at this stage of your career, just for the financial benefits. Yes, a home can be an investment. Yes, you can make money on a home. But that's not your goal for the next 3 years. You're not buying a home to get rich quick over the next several years. You're not buying a home right now because it's going to help you retire any earlier. So just keep that in mind. So in this exercise, what I did is I'm comparing a rent payment of $1,300 a month over the next 4 years. I'm comparing that to a mortgage payment, which is more expensive on a monthly basis. So a mortgage payment where the PITI, we'll be going through that shortly, is $1,553 a month. So on a monthly basis, this purchase is costing more than the rental. However, there are two benefits to home ownership. There's the equity and the appreciation. So the equity here is referring to the fact that every month when you make a mortgage payment, part of that $74,000 that you've paid goes to pay down the balance of the mortgage. So if you bought a house for $275,000, making the regular mortgage payments, when you go to sell it 4 years later, the balance will be $21,000 less. So if you sell the house for the same $275,000, you will, I'm keeping it simple, forget other external factors and costs, you will have made $21,000 on the sale of that home because you get that money back once that mortgage balance is paid off. That's why, if you've ever heard that phrase, why rent and pay the landlord when you can own a place and pay yourself, so that's what that's referring to. That's where that came from. Then you've got your appreciation, which is the increase in value of the home from the time you bought it to the time you sold it. I just mentioned a slide ago that the average annual appreciation this past year in the country has been 6.5%. You're not always going to see that, but a good average year over year is about 3.5%. So assuming a 3.5% appreciation, your house will be worth $36,000 more when you sell it than when you bought it. So that's $36,000 that you've made. So given these two financial benefits, now you are looking at your house having cost $17,000 over this 4-year period compared to $62,000 rent. However, this isn't the end of the equation. There are two things that chip away at this. So it may look like a savings of $44,000 and change, but really it's less than that because you have to take maintenance into consideration. Any repairs that come up, you're responsible for. I used a 1% as a standard annual industry average, but if you were to buy a new home, new condo, new townhome, it's going to be less than that. If you buy a very old home that needs a lot of TLC and work, it's going to be more than that, but you're going to know about that and take that into consideration beforehand. But let's assume 1% and per year in maintenance costs. And then the other big ticket item is the cost of selling the home, which is typically going to be 6%. that goes to the it's split between the two real estate agents. So now you take these into consideration, and your net difference is about $16,000. So yes, in this example, and of course, any city you look at and the rental and the purchase that you're looking at will be different. But in this example, you come out $16,000 ahead in purchasing over renting. Is that going to change your life? No. I mean, it's not, just pocket change. It's a serious amount of money, but it is not life-changing. Now, there are plenty of residents selling a home this season that have seen a great run-up in value of their homes over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and they're walking away with a lot of money. But again, that's not guaranteed, and you're going to have cycles in the marketplace. So at least I wanted to point this out so that you get an idea of the numbers and what some people say out there. And I was going to say what some so-called experts say out there, because as you'll see in this talk, one of the things I really discuss a lot is about, who can you trust? Here's an example of a sales flyer that came from a loan officer to a real estate agent. And anytime I bring these kinds of examples into play, I cross out the identifying information. In this kind of a public setting, I don't like to necessarily speak badly about a particular company by name, but at any point in the future, if you want to run something by me one-on-one, I'm happy to call it like it is and share my thoughts with you. But in this setting, here's a loan officer who's trying to say, oh, you should buy a home because look at how much wealth you can build by buying a home. And they're using flawed logic, flawed reasoning here. They're saying you buy a home that you put 5% down on, so you put $20,000 down. The home gained 6.5% over the last year, so it went up in value $26,000. And so what they're saying is, well, you only invested $20,000. It went up in value $26,000. So that's 130% ROI, return on investment. That's not right, guys. This is a so-called professional that you might come across that you would not trust. You do not want to trust them because, first of all, they're assuming just a 1-year appreciation. That's just on paper. They're also not taking into consideration the costs of maintaining the home, the costs of selling the home, like I showed you on the prior slide. They're just saying you allocated $20,000 on your down payment. The house is now worth more. So boom, you've got 130% return on your investment. That's wrong. So getting back to it, the reason you buy right now at this stage of your careers is not to make money. Hopefully you do. And if you do it right, worst case scenario is you got to own a home and you break even at the end of that period. But the reason you buy, again, goes back to this Venn diagram. If what you qualify for lines up with what you feel paying, which lines up with local home values. Yes, here you asked, at least it seems to be that you asked a question here, but it doesn't pop. Oh, there we go. I had that deleted by mistake. So when this session is over, this is for you asked for the slides. Go ahead and email me. You can email me because that's where I can respond to it. I don't save this information here. So you can email me at talfrank@PhysicianLoans.com. That will be on your webinar information. And I'm happy to also provide any other advice or feedback you'd like afterwards, and also share the handout. So let's go back to determining how do we determine how much you qualify for. And this is a term called the debt ratio. And what the debt ratio is, it's a ratio of your total monthly debt divided by your monthly gross income. And each loan type will we're going to go through these different loan types just so you have a general working knowledge of what they are. Each loan type has its own allowable debt ratio. So if you work with us, we allow a 50% debt ratio. And what that means is that on the right side, this equation has to be equal to or less than 50%. So what you do, and I say you, this is really the first step that you're going to take with a loan officer. One of the two professionals you're going to be your loan officer and your real estate agent. So your loan officer will go through this analysis and fill in the denominator, put in your annual income, pre-tax, so gross income. In the numerator, fill in all of your monthly debt payments. And then what we do is we basically treat your house as X and we solve for X. And that will tell us what is the maximum amount that your housing payment can be and still qualify for the loan. And then we take that number and tell you, okay, this housing payment translates into this dollar amount for purchase price. So you might qualify for a $1,500 a month payment, and that might qualify for a $280,000 home. And now you're going to know where to go with your search. So for example, looking at one of these filled out, if you're applying for a loan that has a debt ratio, that allows a debt ratio of 50%, in the numerator, we've got your total monthly debt that's allowed is $2,417 because we know your monthly gross income is $4,833. Again, that's not going to be exact for you, but for our example here. And so you take in all your monthly payments, looking at that, and then whatever's left between your current total monthly debt and that $2,417 is what you're left with that you qualify for the housing payment. So the $1 million question is how your student loans accounted for. And this is the first time that I'm really addressing one of the reasons, I haven't talked about it up to now, but one of the reasons why most of you need a physician loan in order to qualify. Because as a graduating medical school student, you don't have proof of what your student loan payments are. You're not making payments. You're not obligated to make payments yet as a student. Once you graduate, you've got an automatic 6-month grace period. And so you can't reach out to your servicer right now and say, I need a letter proving what my monthly payments are. Traditional financing requires that. A true physician loan does not. We simply assume your IBR payment, your income-based repayment or income-driven payment. If you have already had that session with your school, you know what that is. If not, you're about to learn, but it's a greatly reduced payment that you're required to make during residency based on your residence salary because you're not yet a 6-figure earning doctor. So we'll come back to this as well because that's key. It is so key that, here's an example of what I call a physician loan, not a physician loan, a physician loan. I hope you guys appreciate the cleverness there. I came up with that myself. Here's an example. I get these emails all the time. Here's someone who emailed me. Again, I cross out any identifying information. But here's someone who wrote to me that said they thought it was a physician loan, but it was not a true physician loan. It was just being marketed as one. But they were running into an issue. They said, he will exclude my student loans only if I can show deferment for 12 months. Well, you guys, again, you may not know this yet. I've just mentioned it, but you cannot get that kind of deferment letter or showing that your loans are deferred for 12 months. You won't be able to do that. So that's not a loan that's really going to work for a graduating medical school student. I'm going to come back to that with a few other examples as well, because that is a major, major pitfall to avoid. You want to avoid the physician loans because, like I said, Most of you will need a true physician loan, and I'm going to show you a chart on how you can determine that. But since we're talking about payments, let me explain what goes into a mortgage payment. A mortgage payment is also known as your PITI. That's your principal and interest, which is the monthly amount you pay on the amount that you borrowed. Then you've got your taxes, which is the real estate taxes. You are going to, every real estate property has an annual tax bill, and you pay 1/12 of that every month with your mortgage. And then insurance is your homeowner's insurance. That is hazard insurance, in case of fire, damage, something like that. And then for those of you that are going to buy a condo or a townhome, you'll also have your association dues to consider as well. So a total monthly payment is going to be your what's called PITI. All right, so here's an example of one broken down. Going back to that example that I used earlier, the $275,000 purchase, we're using a physician loan with no money down. As a placeholder, I'm using 3.75% as the interest rate. No, that doesn't mean that is always the interest rate. It doesn't mean that is exactly the rate you're going to get. Could be less, could be more. And you're going to have that discussion with your loan officer. But in this example, at 3.75%, when you borrow $275,000, your P&I, principal and interest, is $1,273. Taxes will vary based on where in the country you're buying. In my example, I use $230 a month, and then your homeowner's insurance is $50 a month. So it'll run you about $1,500 a month for your purchase. And if you have a dual income family situation, or household situation, so there's more money, or let's say you're buying in one of those more affordable markets, Columbus, Ohio, in the Midwest, definitely places in the South and Southeast also have some more affordable scenarios. You could ask your loan officer to go through any calculation that you want to help you zero in on that Venn diagram of how much you feel comfortable for. So you might qualify for a $275,000 loan, but let's say you want to keep your total monthly housing expense to $1,200 or less. So that loan officer is going to help you determine what size home you should be looking at. So I said we were going to give you a working knowledge of the different loans out there. Anywhere you research, anything you read, really you're going to come across these 4 loans. They're all, as I said, if we start on the left-hand side, there is something called a physician loan. It's what most of you will need to buy at this stage of the game. Some of you may not need it, but as you'll see shortly, there are financial benefits to it because it's a less expensive loan. So we'll come back to that. That's when I gave in the intro. That's what we're known for. We're actually the ones who pioneered a true physician loan and really kind of got it out there on a large scale to the medical community. Let's say you weren't a doctor. You were buying a home in the U.S. and you had good credit, chances are you'd be looking at what's called a conforming loan. That means you conform to the guidelines established by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Who's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac? They're the 800-pound gorilla in the mortgage world, much like Sally Mae is for student loans. They buy a lot of the mortgages out there, regardless of the originating bank. What if you didn't have good credit? You'd be looking at an FHA loan. So the rates are still good on an FHA loan, but it has more expensive what's called mortgage insurance. So what is mortgage insurance? Mortgage insurance is insurance that you as a home buyer are required to pay, and it protects the lender should you default. Well, It's statistically proven that a doctor, to include a graduating med student and a resident with good credit, the likelihood of you defaulting on your mortgage is slim to none. Therefore, on a true physician loan, PMI, private mortgage insurance, is not required. So again, that's one of the benefits of a physician loan. It does save you money. You don't have to pay mortgage insurance. On FHA loans, because it's for those folks with a worse scenario for whatever reason, it's more expensive mortgage insurance. And the final loan is a VA loan, or Veterans Administration loan. And as the name implies, it's only for eligible military. I don't go into too much detail on that in this case, but again, just so you know that's out there. Now, the challenge for you is that there is, as highly regulated as the mortgage industry is, there is really no regulation on how a company markets their loan. So while many of you will need a physician loan, and you need a true physician loan, you might come across a company who is offering a conforming loan, but they call it a physician loan. I'm going to show you examples. And this is why also one place where you can find a good, trustworthy loan officer who offers a physician loan is if you go to Physician Loans and you request a loan officer anywhere in the U.S., at least you know that's a good starting point, and I'll show you some more about that in just a minute. Let me get into a couple of questions here. Could you clarify the deferment aspect you're commenting on, in particular how that apply for a non-traditional student that has used their 6-month deferment on some of their loans? Those are two different issues. Having used a 6-month deferment on a loan is different than what I was talking about. From a mortgage standpoint, if you have debt, you've got to prove what your monthly payment is to the lender. And so a lender is going, if you have student loan debt of any kind, a lender is going to want to see proof from the servicer on what your monthly payments are. Either you have that right now, great, and you turn that in and that goes into calculating your debt ratio, or you don't have it because you are in a grace period, you're still a student, or you might be in, again, you guys may not know this yet, but as you go into residency, you've got an automatic grace period 6 months after you graduate, but after that, you have to reapply every 12 months, so you don't have that proof. So that's the whole point of a physician loan. You don't have to even try that on a physician loan. And so it looks like someone typed in a follow-up question to that. How can I prove what my monthly payment is when the government has paused all payments? Exactly. So that's one of the challenges where you want to talk to the loan officer and make sure that the loan officer knows your situation. Now, this is a little bit more specific, but has the government actually stopped your payments, or did you actually apply for the ability to not make payments? There's a distinction there, and that's what you want to talk to your loan officer about. And your best case, regardless of your answer, your best case scenario is if you go with a physician loan, the requirements for that are easier than with a conforming or FHA. And there's a question here, is it possible to get an FHA loan with 0 PMI? Never. An FHA loan always has PMI. You can get out of PMI on a conforming loan if you put 20% down. An FHA loan always has PMI, as does a VA loan. It's called something differently, something different, but no, there's no way to get out of it. Good questions, guys. All right, so why do I say that most of you would need a physician loan? Well, we know you have little savings and we know you have student loan debt. That's fine, that's a given. That's not really the reason. if you look at the middle bullet point on the left, it has to do with the proof of your student loans. Even for those of you who are in a residency, you're on a cycle where every 12 months you need to reapply for what your payments will be in the coming 12-month cycle. And traditional underwriting states that you have to show proof of what your payments are for the next 12 months. Again, a physician loan does not require that, so you're definitely going to bring this up as a question with your loan officer. Also, for those of you who are graduating medical school students, once you match, what do you get? You get a match letter, but that's not a legally binding contract. That's not an employment contract. You still have to sign a contract with the residency program. Problem is that most residency programs don't actually provide an executed employment contract until the end of the summer, much after the point when you would have needed it if you're trying to buy a home. So as a graduating med student, you may have matched, and for those of you that are early match, you know what I'm talking about. It's just a match letter. It says, congratulations, you've been accepted to our program, but it's not a contract. So traditional underwriting, traditional loans, state proof of employment is an actual contract or pay stubs, which we don't have yet, whereas a physician loan will accept your match letter as the written proof. A physician loan also allows you to start early, which for those of you asking about FHA loans, they do want to see pay stubs. And in some cases, traditional lenders are going to want to see your medical license. If you're working as a doctor, then you must be licensed as a doctor. Well, you're not going to have a state license in hand prior to when you need to close on the property. So here I'll go through a few of these quickly, some examples. Here's something that someone emailed out to me. This is April of last year. So they were in the process of getting a mortgage. In this case, I kept the name Johnson Financial. That's a generic enough small company. And they said, our problem is this person claimed they verified it was a physician loan. And they say, our problem is with our student loan payments. They are insisting that we show them documentation from our loan servicers with the amount our repayments will be each month. Again, April, this is a graduating med student, April of the final year, they can't get that. So they were being sold what I call, again, the physician loan. Here's another example of somebody that said they were working with somebody that was asking for a contract that is signed by the university and a statement from the financial aid office saying what their payments would be. Well, most financial aid officers are not going to put in writing. They can't put in writing, here's what your payments will be. They're not the student loan servicer. They're not the lender. They can say, here are the options they might be if they qualify for income-based payment or pay or repay, but they can't put it in writing that this is what it will be. So this is notice March. This was an older one from a few years ago, but same scenario where somebody thought they were going down the right path and now they're being asked for additional information that they could not meet. So I created this cheat sheet. You guys are welcome to screen capture this. I highly recommend you use it. It is included in the handouts. And these are the points on this left-hand side are among the first 7 points that you're going to ask of any loan officer to make sure that you're going down the right path, that you're getting a true physician loan. You're going to ask about the down payment. A true physician loan does allow for no money down. A true physician loan does not require proof of your payments for the next 12 months, does not require proof of your deferment. True physician loan does not have mortgage insurance. There are companies out there marketing a physician loan, but have mortgage insurance. It's not a true physician loan. So use this to help you navigate that. Now, of course, again, I said you can, well, let me get to that in a second. In the handouts, I created these 4 slides. to show you when it would be appropriate to use a particular loan, when it wouldn't be, between the physician loan, conforming, the FHA, or the VA loan. And it's not that any of them are bad, it's just a right time and a wrong time for each one. So in the intro, you saw this slide, and I mentioned we're a preferred provider for the AMA, AOA, and others. So we have a national reach, but as a company, if you reach out to us, we do business in 17 states. We're not operating in all 50 states. In a program that we set up many years ago to help members of AMA, AOA, and SOMA and others across the country is that what we said is if a doctor reaches out to us, we will help them out no matter what, meaning if you're buying in a state in which we're licensed, no problem. You work directly with one of our loan officers and you can get a true physician loan. If you are buying in a state in which we do not operate, we will at least recommend somebody that we know that has a true physician loan. And we've got somebody in our office who tracks across the country who's offering what. The list is constantly changing. Some companies offer a true physician loan and they drop it after a short period of time. But because we do this, I get contacted all the time from companies who want us to recommend them. And here's another example of what you need to be careful about on the physician loan side. So here's an email that I received from Michelle. Michelle wrote, good morning, Todd. I've attached the guidelines for our doctor loan programs. Wonderful. So I want to review them, see if we would feel comfortable recommending them. And then notice she goes on to say, this is a Freddie Mac loan and does require MI, mortgage insurance. Well, needless to say, I didn't even bother reviewing the guidelines. I did not bother calling her back. It's not a true physician loan. I would never recommend them. The problem is, not for you guys now because you're hearing this, but for your colleagues out there who have not gone through this, they're just going to see this company advertising a physician loan out there, and then what's going to happen is about a week or two prior to closing, their loan's going to blow up, and they won't be able to close. So that's why that cheat sheet is very important. You want to knock out all those questions and know that they're not going to be a problem. Let's get into some numbers. How much does it cost to get this process closed? Anywhere from $0 to about $5,000, depending again on where you are in the country. There are 3 items to budget. There's your down payment. If it's a physician loan, 0. Conforming loan, 5%. So you pretty much determine that. Closing costs, that will vary depending on where you are in the country, but for most of you, it's going to be about 1 to 3% of your purchase price. One of the best tips I can give you is here at the bottom of the screen. You're going to tell your real estate agent to either negotiate to have the seller pay the closing costs on your behalf, which in truth is tough to do in today's market. It's a strong seller's market, but your realtor still has the ability to structure the contract so that it does include your closing costs. Then you've got your escrows, which is not a cost or a fee, but it's money that you need to budget for closing to pay for future taxes and insurance. So for most of you, it will be anywhere up to $5,000. I don't have a slide on this, but if some of you feel you are going to be short on funds, check out graduationloans.com. www.graduationloans.com. It is listed in my resources page, but this is a special loan for 4th-year students and first-year residents. So it's only available to that population, and it's a personal loan of up to $30,000. And it has aside from good rates, a grace period of up to 36 months of not having to make payments. So something, it's one of the last few special loans, a student loan type of scenario that you're going to be eligible for. All right, so let's go through the timeline here, what to do and when. You're going to start out by talking to a loan officer, and as we mentioned, there are two professionals. There's your loan officer who arranges your financing, and your real estate agent that deals with the home. So you're going to reach out to a loan officer anytime between now and as soon after a match as possible. So here's an example. I've mentioned you can go to our website and you can request a loan officer. So if you go to PhysicianLoans.com, here's an example where Anna reached out to us and she said, gave a little bit about her scenario. I'm a fourth-year student planning to match somewhere in Ohio, and she opened up with some questions. If you don't know what to start asking, that's okay too. These are good loan officers. They're going to be able to lead you through it. In the handouts also, I include this slide, questions to ask the loan officer about himself, herself, or and about their company and their process. Notice the two that I highlighted here. A true physician loan, and what student loan documentation will you need from my student loan company? These two questions can really prevent a lot of pain and heartache down the line. If you need a true physician loan, make sure you're working with one, and make sure you will not have to provide proof from your student loan company just prior to closing, because for those of you on that are graduating med students, you won't be able to. And here's how serious it is. Here's a flyer from a trusted large bank. If I mention the name, many of you guys might recognize the name. Notice I blank all that out. So here's a flyer of their programs. That middle program is a doctor loan. I know that's hard to see, so let's zoom in on that. So this is what they're marketing as a doctor loan. Notice our first bullet point. From the fact that it's not 100% financing, it's 95%, meaning 5%. Notice it has mortgage insurance required, yet they're still calling it a doctor loan. And notice their third bullet point. Student loan debt deferred for greater than 12 months from the date of closing can be excluded from the debt to income ratio. Where have we seen that before? The reason you see that same language over and over is because that is the requirement for conforming loans, for FHA loans, for VA loans. That is a written requirement for those kinds of loans. So this is not a true doctor loan. This is somebody marketing this. And again, it's a bank that it's a legitimate bank. Otherwise, I don't have anything bad to say about them, but it's not a true physician loan. So that's why you want to make sure you're working with the right loan officer so that you can get pre-qualified for a true physician loan. Again, you can start the process now. If you go to PhysicianLoans.com, you put in your request. By the end of the day today or at some point tomorrow, you're already matched with the loan officer that you can start talking to. And it's okay if you don't know where you're headed yet. Once you do that, now you can reach out to a real estate agent. And again, the timeline is at any point between now through as soon after match as possible. So I get asked a lot, well, how do we find a good, trustworthy real estate agent? One way is you go to drsagent.com. If you work with a certified DRS agent, this is a network of agents across the country, from different companies, but they have this designation where they specialize in working with doctors. It is a network that is approved. If you go to the websites for AMA, AOA, AMSA, and SOMA, it's listed there as a preferred provider. So again, at least this is a quick shortcut to get to a professional that you can trust, that has experience in the industry and experience in working with doctors. So you can make that request. Again, even if you don't know where you're going, if you think you might be in one of two cities, it's okay to even request an agent in two different cities. Here's an example of a flyer that I received in my mailbox from an agent. Now, it just so happens that he is a DRS agent. And it also just so happens that he's a friend of mine who lives a few neighborhoods away. So I got on his mailing list, just living in this zip code. But I asked him for permission to use this because I liked his text here where he says, when it comes to a real estate agent, I'm reading in the middle here, are they a problem solver, a therapist, a listener, and a grinder? Are they someone who treats your home as if it were their own, or just another transaction on their way to their #1 sales trophy? I added #1 because if you look in ads, if you look online, every agent says, I'm the #1 in this, I'm the #1 in that. Somehow every agent out there is #1. So, you're going to want an agent who's really working with you hand in hand and does have your best interests in mind. Notice also on the back side of his flyer, I included this just so you can see some of the information that a good real estate agent can provide you with. I mentioned I live in Atlanta. I'm up the street from Emory. And possible areas for residents to live include Druid Hills, Old Fourth Ward, Buckhead. These are 3 areas, 3 neighborhoods around Emory. And each one has some different stats, different market values. And so a good real estate agent is going to walk you through that so that, again, first, #1, you can determine if buying is an option for you. And then #2, if you are going to buy, where's the right place to live? What's the right purchase? Included in the handout, I showed you some questions to ask the loan officers. Here you've got some questions to ask the real estate agents about themselves. So, anytime between now and as soon after match as possible, you are going to connect with a loan officer and a real estate agent. And then once match hits, now you're actually able to start making an offer on a home. I hope that even prior to match, you've been tracking the market with the agent, but once match hits, you're able to make an offer on a place. And so for most of you, you'll be making an offer at some point in April or May. And then once that happens, all these other steps will take place. Now, I don't go through all these sessions as it is. I'm going to be running a little bit late, so I apologize for that. Still, I don't go through these sessions. I put them up here, or these steps. I put them up here as reference so that you know what to expect, and this is what your loan officer and your real estate agent will walk you through. So I get the question a lot, well, how can I trust my loan officer? How can I trust my real estate agent? I mean, they're making money on me. They want the sale. Yes, they are making money on you. They are professionals that earn a living that way. And just like any professional that you work with, that's why you want them to be trusted professionals that do have your best interest in mind. It is no different than when I select a plumber, a mechanic, an attorney. Those I trust, those I don't. By the way, I go to my doctor. I trust my doctor, even though my doctor's making money on me. They certainly are making money on me. So don't be afraid that they are making money on you. They are still giving you proper advice, or they're just looking for a sale. I gave you enough examples of those loan officers that they're just looking for the sale. Let me before I give you another example of that. Yeah, Christian, answer these slides to be available. If you shoot me an email, and for those of you that want slides, happy to send that to you, no problem. Let's see here. There's a question. What if you have a low credit score of 650-ish and want to qualify for a physician loan? So that's a great question. The whole reason a physician loan exists is because, and I think I mentioned this, a physician with good credit is not likely to default. So that's why that program exists, and that's why mortgage insurance is not required. Typically, a score of 700 and above is required. If you work directly with us, we also allow scores of 680 to 700. But in those scenarios, 5% down is required. We don't allow no money down. So the answer to your question is I would get on the phone. Well, first you need to work with someone who really knows what they're doing. Go to PhysicianLoans.com, request a loan officer, and just say right up front that you don't think your scores qualify, and you want to discuss what it takes to get your scores there. If you're buying in a state in which we operate, we're very good at walking you through what steps you need to take to get your scores higher and see if it's possible to do that sooner rather than later so that you can buy yet this summer, or at least you'll know I'll rent for a year and now I know my game plan. So definitely reach out to a loan officer, bring that up in advance, because with a score in the middle 600s, as long as it's there, you don't qualify for a true physician loan. We have a question here. Are these loans available for multifamily homes? Good question. That is lender dependent. So when you say multifamily, we do allow it for a 1 or 2 unit home. So you can do it for a duplex. No, it can't be for a quad or certainly higher, like an apartment complex. It is something where you are living in it, and it is primarily as your residence. It's not because you want to be a landlord tycoon. That's just the general rule across the board for all physician loans. And if you're interested in getting something that's more than a single unit, duplex, triplex, quad, you would definitely want to mention that up front in talking to your loan officer, and they'll be able to tell you exactly what's possible. Before we wrap up here, getting back to who should you trust, here's something that I got. Well, I was going to say I got a kick out of it, but really it was more just very upsetting. Here's an actual flyer that I got in the mail from a super large bank, one that, if I mention the name, all of you would know their name. All of you have seen their commercials. And look at this. It just gets me every time I look at it. What they're advising you is adjust how you pay, not how you live. Really? So you're telling Americans to, don't worry about the debt. Don't worry about how much debt. Just focus on smaller payments. Even if the rates are higher, the payments are smaller. It'll take you 3 lifetimes to pay it off. But just focus on your payments as opposed to, God forbid, changing your lifestyle or not having something extra in your life for a period of time until you can actually afford it. And these are the professionals out there who are trying to give you advice. So again, just another example here of a physician loan. Here they thought they're getting a physician loan, but they're being asked for a contract, a signed residency contract. Here's one that is where they were at my talk that I gave at Turo, and they asked for some assistance afterwards, where they noticed they were referred to by their real estate agent. So their real estate agent referred them to a company that they said was a physician loan. And here's the flyer, here's the sheet that they sent me. Notice, these are all supposed to be a physician loan. Notice, so 10% down, the first column is with MI. The next one, paid monthly. The next one is 10% down, and it may not have monthly mortgage insurance, but you can pay a lump sum up front. They don't tell you how much. It's about $5,000, because when you look at their cash to close, that's about the difference in those numbers. And the last one says, okay, no MI, but notice the interest rate is, what, % higher on that? So these guys are playing games. That's not right. And, we're over time, so I don't need to go through more of these scenarios, but here, just real quick, here's another flyer from somebody promoting a physician loan program, but notice it says 5% down. Okay, I'm okay with that if they want to do a physician loan and instead of 0 down, it's 5% down. But notice the next bullet point, lender paid mortgage insurance. And notice this last line, we've been talking about it. Any student loans deferred greater than 12 months from closing can be excluded from qualifying. So you've heard that. That's not a physician loan. And a practicing doctor would qualify for this loan. Yeah, they would qualify. But why would they do that, knowing they have to pay expensive mortgage insurance? It's over $100 a month or more if they're buying on the higher end here. So it doesn't make sense. So, again, pay attention to the Venn diagram I mentioned. Remember the 4 things that matter most, that diagram. Work with the right loan officer, the right real estate agent. You can go to PhysicianLoans.com. You can go to drsagent.com as one way to fast track that. And then make sure you have the right loan. So this image that we started with might have been the old mortgage you. You're not an expert on everything at this point, but hopefully you don't have that deer caught in the headlights feeling anymore. You do feel a little bit wiser, a little bit more prepared to go through this scenario. This is the resources page that I mentioned. You're welcome to screen capture this. It is also in the handouts. And afterwards, if you want to reach out to me to bounce anything off me or ask questions, I've got my email address here. You're always welcome to reach out. So for those of you that didn't screen capture, I'm also happy to share the slides as handouts for this. So let me address the additional questions that we have here. And for those of you that have to run, thank you for your time. I hope that you found this to be very helpful, and all the best. And with that, I will begin answering other questions at this point.